So this is the fourth tutorial for the Impasto brush pack, and it's a more advanced tutorial this time. We will be using a lot of stems to build shapes to simulate real oil painting today. And I hope that you have watched all the first 3 tutorials, because in the first tutorial we really focused a lot on dual color loading. And the second one, we learned about color changing and then seamlessly moving from one color to another. In the third tutorial, I actually introduced some stamp manipulation techniques and also some color manipulation techniques. But today is a more advanced tutorial, and we will be focusing a lot into stamp manipulation and color manipulation. We won't be painting a lot today, so we won't be using the Impasto brush strokes to paint. We'll be using stems to manipulate them more.
You want to sit there?
Fourth tutorial, second scene. So let's open up the project first. This is the project, and if you see in the layers, I have the base painting here, which is made of a background layer and the subject. So this is a flat 2D painting that we will be applying Impasto to, and when we apply the Impasto, the sample one I did look like this. So like I said, today we will be focusing a lot more on realism. So when it comes to that, we're gonna have to look at the strokes. Like this flower in particular, it's simplified, so it's just made of a few strokes, and when we look at the strokes, we have to see the direction it's flowing. This is just flowing in this direction, and this is going here. So it's a good idea to just mark the flow first, like especially this part here is one single piece. And when we have analyzed the base painting, even if it's yours, we can effectively put our Impasto on later on. This also means that when you are doing your base painting, you gotta kind of plan how it's gonna look like with Impasto, like the direction of the brushes and stuff like that. Because in traditional painting, we rely a lot on movement to generate strokes, and especially this is still life. So still life is not as difficult as landscape, but still life uses a lot of motion and brush marks, directions to create textures. The second thing we need to look out for when we are analyzing a painting is where you think the paint would clump. So let's say you have a brush and you paint in this direction. When you paint in this direction, the paint here will actually clump out sideways here. And this is why there's clumping on this edge. And the edges usually has a lot of clumps, because as you press, you're pressing it in a direction where you cause the paint to clump. So try and visualize when you're looking at the 2D painting and guess where the paint would clump. So if I look at this, I can already guess that the paint is going to clump here, maybe here. So as you apply your Impasto, you gotta have a clear direction of what you're doing. So like here is actually the same color and the same value. So the only way to differentiate and suggest that there is a petal here is to clump it here. So I think I did the same thing, yeah. So there's a clump here. So even though it's the same color, the identity is the same, but because the texture is different, we are suggesting that there is another petal there. Okay, this flower could be done a lot better. I'm gonna see if I can improve this today. So like for this flower, we can see that the direction is going here, and the paint is mostly gonna clump here, here. So just analyze the whole painting first and make a guess of what you want to do, and just lay out a roadmap and a plan first before you proceed. Also think about the design and how you would want to design the textures, because right now we're not painting in real life, so we can take our time and actually decide what we want to do with the Impasto, and we can even change it because of the digital age. Just one gentle reminder. Remember, I talk a lot about maintaining the color and the values and the gradients that are on the base painting. So let's say you're putting an Impasto here. There are like 1, 2, and 3 colors. So make sure you retain all of that when you're applying the Impasto. If you are just going to apply one orange one here, it's not going to work. So Just look at the color changes and look at the value changes before you get started. In the third tutorial, I introduced the overlay workflow so that it can speed up your painting process with Impasto. So today I'm going to expand on that a little bit. So we know that we are starting the workflow with cat hair everywhere. Cat hair, oh my god. So we know that we are starting the workflow with black and white. And we have a new layer set to overlay at 50%. And we can paint on it with any Impasto brushes we want. So let's just paint with this one. This is a D, so switch to black. So if I paint on it, I get an Impasto shade. So we can see that this is not really matching to the background. And if we open up the components of this artwork in normal mode, 100% opacity, we can see that the black is here that we have loaded and the white is here. So the reason why it is not matching to our background is because it's too bright, right? So the bright component is being controlled by the light color. So this is what's going to happen. If you lower down the value of the white and you paint again, make sure to switch back to black, you can see it's matching already. So this is how you can control painting over your artwork, and it's matching even here. So basically it's matching almost everywhere. This artwork has a lot more grays than white and is more suitable for that. So now let's look at the components again. We lowered down the white and it became gray and it's more matching already, but the shadow is quite harsh, which is the black. So I can also bring the black up so we can see the two colors here. Make sure you don't bring it too close to each other or there will be nothing. Just bring it a little bit up and see. So we can see that when we paint now, the whole thing is getting brighter. So let's try and modify this one to go down a little bit. Okay, now we have a perfect seamless overlay here that we can just quickly add values. Another pro tip, you can actually assign a color instead of just using grays. So if I assign it slightly red, you can see that it has a red kind of edge right now. You can do that, but that would take away the objective of this workflow. This workflow is supposed to speed up your process. So if you try to tweak it too much, you're gonna end up spending more time here instead. So once you have a setup that you are comfortable with and kind of works for almost every scenario, just test it first. You can comfortably change brushes and quickly add some subtle impasto first. So I can verify that it works with all the D brushes. I'm just going to check if it works with the L brushes. For the L brushes, I'm just going to switch here. Wow, perfect. Perfect. So for certain brushes like this one, maybe you have to make it brighter in order to match. Yep. It's more matching now, so it really depends on the situation. Now that we are set up, I'm going to just lay down some textures for the painting. I like to use a smooth thick paint to quickly lay in some edges just to get some impasto going here and there. I can even use it on the background if I want. If you notice, if I'm painting up, it's on my right side. If I'm painting down, it's on my left side. So you gotta kind of adjust a little bit. So if you see here, I did the same for the original sample, but mine is gray because this is an overlay mode painted with grays, and that one is not on overlay mode. It means that I manually pick the colors to do it. So obviously the overlay mode is not going to solve all your problems, and you won't get such good results using this method, but it's a quick way to get started nonetheless. You should only use this if you are short on time, or if you don't really want to spend time working so much with the impasto. You can also use smudge on this layer. It will also work, of course. Okay. So once you have your overlay layer ready, you can move on to the next step, which is to use liners. So liners, we have three options. We have this one and this one here. You just have to lower the size a little bit. And for the third option, we have the round tick. You just have to lower the size enough for it to be a liner brush. These brushes are good for like dabbing like this, so you can get like edges of petals and highlights that way. This one as well. Okay, so this is how this one looks like. Okay, let's get started. So this artwork has a lot of lines, so we can just go ahead and add all the lines in first. I'm not going to focus so much on color picking anymore. You should know your color picking by now, unless it's a new technique that I want to share. Okay, just like that, I can put in like 3 lines already. Fourth one, I can just join the impasto by smudging in between using the 3D smudge. This is still the same color, I'm just changing how light it is for the main color. I can add even more strokes here. You don't really have to follow the color of the base, you can even add it lighter that way to just give a punch. So it's an easy way to get started with this artwork because there's so many lines. Like for highlights, these brushes are time saving. I'm not even picking colors, I'm just like sliding the color picker to get what I want. So many lines, go ahead with it. This leaf here can actually be translated into just one stroke. We can just use the round thick paint for this. There we go, and we can just carve the shape out with the smudge. Okay, so this is how you do that. You can also do the leaves as well. Okay, now let's look at this one. We can add more teardrops at the end of it where the paint pools. When you paint and you don't see any difference in the value, you can just extreme it a little bit to give more contrast. There we go. Okay, and you can start to add highlights as well. So you can see here there's like 1, 2, 3 highlights. Yeah, just dab it with the same brush. You can swap to the liner brush for the highlight. So your to-do list is the stalks, the petals, highlights, and leaves, and also the reflections. So this is the third tip in the speed workflow. So remember just now we did these 2 strokes with overlay, and then there's a slight color difference compared to the original one. So if you want to do it the real way, you can too, and it's quite fast as well. So all you have to do is use the L brushes to paint. They are really quick to use because you can swap light colors every time. So I think I did it with this L paint, and I just picked this color, and another one I picked slightly darker. So this is what I get. What I want is for this background color to be here and for this color to be darker. So we can actually just cheat and swap it and see what happens. There we go. So if I paint over, I have a better color. Okay, you can use this brush to really quickly add marks in your background that are not very obvious. I mean, of course this is quite obvious because it's high in contrast. You can just lower the contrast and pick a color that's closer to the main color. You can also start to add edges. There I added the same edge. I just have to carve this out. Like any edge that you want that is a bit more natural, you can just do it this way. So if you're lazy, you can just use this to quickly add like small strokes here and there. Another handy brush to use in the L brush is the Streaky Thick Paint. Streaky Thick Paint gives you something like this. It's a light brush, so paint with this. Adjust the size. Can still be used. Okay, so now we have one here. So I can use back the same Easy Smooth Thick Paint. Okay, so let me explain why I add this stroke. So the reason why this stroke exists is that it creates like a kind of like a cup for this leaf, and it's more obvious, of course, if there's a highlight here, which we can add. Okay, so it makes sense now, right, from far, like the existence of the strokes. So you gotta kind of use the strokes to continue modeling the artwork. Easy Smooth Thick Paint adds like on this edge, and then Fake adds it on the other edge, and Creamy Peat adds it on both edges. So if you have a need to add for both sides, you can use this one. So I like L brushes because it's easy to change paint. So you can just carve out the shape a little bit. Okay. The overlay workflow adds a subtle Impasto layer to the entire painting, and liner gets you done with all the lining and the highlights and certain depths and leaves as well. The Easy L brushes gives you access to add even more textures to your painting, but you realize that you can almost finish the bottle and the background and leaves, but the flowers and the table stays untouched. So this is where stamp manipulation comes in. Now let's see what we have so far. So first we did the overlay layer, which is on the first layer that you did, and then the other one should be the liner, and this one should be your L brushes. Okay, let's rename this group to Speed Workflow and make another layer, and from here onwards it will all be stamps. So when it comes to stamps, the first rule is to make a new layer for every stamp, and then every time you make a new layer you just merge down, so you work with as minimal layer as possible. Okay, let's just compress everything. First, let's put some textures for the table. Okay, so we have a texture here. I want it to be darker, to be more contrasty. Okay, there we go. See, I can pick back the original color and drop it in. We learned a lot of techniques for stamp manipulation in the previous tutorial already, and now it's good time to just refresh them. So the first one would be to use the free transform tool. There are freeform, uniform, distort, and warp, and we use it all. But usually, distort fix all your problems. So let's say I just distort like that. The second thing we can do is we can just smudge it. Okay, if I want a dry smudge, I can just smudge this dry and it looks more natural, just like an oil painting. And then we can continue building more stamps this way to fit the background and also the bottle. So now I want to demonstrate another swatch on the background. I'm just gonna use the round thick paint. Love using this brush because it's so versatile. Okay, new layer. Okay, position it and smudge. So I'm using the dry shaper 3D smudge to get a more natural look. Okay, so there we go, we have one already. Now we can actually try dry brushing technique. I have created two brushes for this technique, the dry thick paint D and very dry paint and smudge. This is actually a regular brush, while this is an impasto brush. So let's try out these two. So I'm just gonna pick this because I have my shadow color loaded in already, and see how it looks like. Okay, you can see it from the get-go that it holds a lot more shadow than the main color. So we are going to just tone down the shadow a little bit. Okay, so I can easily just add like dry impasto marks here, which you can also smudge away. So this is a way to give a dry effect, especially on this canvas where it's so visible. You can see that it's really visible because the base painting that I did was very translucent. And you can also try out the very dry paint and smudge, which is just a regular brush, and do some dry brushing to soften off the edge a little bit, especially in areas where you don't want the lines to be too visible. And and you want dry marks instead. There you go. So we learned about the free transform tool, we learned about dry brushing. Now it's time to talk about the real thing. This flower, the way I did it was by painting. So you see that it creates like a shape here. And this shape is kind of pointed in the beginning, but this one is kind of flat. So I think we got to find something that is more flat in the beginning of this stroke. So the brush that I use for this is Fat Spread 3 Thick Painty. So first just paint a stroke. Okay, I think we can work with this stroke. So the first thing to do is to go back to the main color. Pick it again if you have to, drop it back in, and then move the stroke to your flower and warp it. Warp it is your favorite friend for this tutorial. Once you have warped it, just erase a bit for the end. Okay, once you have like erased most of it, you can smudge it already. Okay, once you have smudged it, you can start to alter the edge here, either by using the warp tool or the smudge tool. I think I'm just going to use the warp tool. You can also turn on advanced mesh, yeah, to get better control. Okay. There we go. So this is how you get one stroke. Smudge. Again, new layer. Okay, notice that I didn't even change the color. This is a quicker workflow, I feel. I am going to flip it. Now that it's here, I'm going to pick the correct color, drop it in, and then duplicate it and pick this pink here. So now I have a pink layer and a white one. I'm going to erase the pink a little bit with the fat spray brush. Okay, so now I have this ready, and now I can start to sculpt the stem. So I know I don't want this. I can move this away, use a lower size. Now you have this creamy look here already. So now we've learned about stamp manipulation. The first rule is new layers every time, merge as you go, and then use distort, use warp. If you need to, use advanced mesh, and then once you're done, you smudge it or you dry smudge it. And just now I started applying a second color. I'm actually creating a gradient. So now we're going to move on to the last topic of this tutorial, which is color manipulation, so that you can get your colors accurate when you model all these stems for this tutorial. For the rest of the flowers, you can just experiment and stamp as you go, but you would need these essential techniques to move forward. The stroke of the day is this stroke here, this particular stroke. This is your first tutorial for color manipulation. New layer. I'm just going to build the impasto first without worrying about the color. I'm just going to use the same color that I've been using so far. You can see that it's the same stroke. And now here we have another stroke, and I know exactly what brush it is. It is the Strictly Smooth Thick Paint. Okay, resize it and flip it first. I think I'm going to keep this tool separate, so we're going to work on each one at a time. Let's work on this one first. This one is easy. There is 1, 2, 3 colors, so we are just going to have 3 copies, each for a color. First one is this color. Second one is the pink. Notice that if the pink is here, I am dropping the pink in the same spot. And then the last color is the white. Now I want my white to be the base, so I'm just gonna leave that be. We're gonna erase the brown first. So you see the brown is just here. I'm just gonna memorize that a little bit and then erase as per my memory. Okay, and then the pink is there. Okay, Okay, turn on everything else. Okay, so this is what I get, which is way better than my first attempt. So once I'm done, I merge down and have one stem. And now let's work with this one. For this one, do all your stamp manipulation first. I'm going to smudge out this edge a little bit and smudge out here. If you find that you need a sharper line, use the basic tool. Just resize for your needs and then use the soft pull smudge to clean up the ends. So this is the stroke that I have. We just need to match the color. There's white, there's beige, and this light brown and a darker brown here. And there's this semi-highlight here that I really want to retain this time, including this pale pink highlight. Just gonna do this one by one, so 5 layers should be enough. You don't have to do this for like every stem, but for parts that are really important. For this flower, this stem is very important because you see, if I just leave it as it is, it just doesn't work. I want to keep the darkest part in the last layer at the bottom. So I'm just going to turn it on, drop the color in, turn it off, drop the second color in. Now let's start building the stem. This is going to be base. I'm going to leave it be. Erase what I think does not exist. Okay, the next one. I'm going to turn on the dark one now to see how it looks like. Okay, now the last one, which is the white. Now that we see the whole stroke in itself, we can see the last layer is disturbing the edge of the whole stroke. So I can erase those away that are bordering. And we can merge it. I also want to edit it a little bit. So we need to warp it a little bit. Now we can continue to edit with our smudge if we need to. Now looking at this flower, we can see a lot of directions. This is why I've designed my regular brushes to be all in lines so that you can see the direction of the brush stroke. Like this brush stroke is like this, so we can use something that has that in the sense. So that brush is this brush. So we can use that in this area. So there are so many brushes in my brush pack. How do I actually work with stems? Let me show you how I work with stems. When I'm working with stems, I have many layers of single stems in its maximum size in black and white. So I have a collection of these, and then whenever I just want that stem, I just duplicate this layer and drop my color in. I can use it anywhere I want. You just have to bear in mind a few things. So I drop in orange, right? But the shadows remain black. So this is not usable at all. So the right way to do it is to drop the shadow in first right at the black, and the orange I will drop at the whitest spot. If this is the color I want for the main color, I will drop it again. So this is actually the swatch that I want. But if all your library of stems are made from black and white, you're gonna end up with something very high in contrast. And we have talked about this before. If everything is made in high contrast, it's going to bother the whole visual design. So if you want to have a library of stems whenever you are working with stem manipulation, this is how I advise you to do it. Instead of making it black and white, make it in gray and white. This should solve your problem. So I keep it like that as a layer. And if I want to use it, I can just duplicate it. And now let's say I want to use it in the area that I just showed you. So I can just drop any color in. And then pick a shadow color nearby and drop it in. Drop the main color in again. Okay, so now I have this that I can use. I can position this into place. I can warp it a bit. Once I'm done with the stamp manipulation, I go into color manipulation. Duplicate it, drop it in. And if you're wondering, nope, there isn't a better workflow. The other better workflow is the overlay mode, which doesn't give good results. If you really want to paint with Impasto, you can do it in another app. There is another app for this. Maybe I'll share a little bit about that at the end of this video. Okay, now let's build the stamp. Brown should be at the bottom. Always determine which one should be at the bottom, so that it's easy for you to plan, and then merge it and smudge. There we go, another petal. So this piece is technical because every single petal requires stamp manipulation. This is the basis of all still life painting. Everything is done in strokes and everything has to be modeled correctly, which this isn't modeled correctly. So like I said, I'm going to try and fix this today. So merge all the layers you have so far. In fact, I'm gonna start a new library. Start this. I need this stroke. Okay, I have my strokes library already. I'm gonna demonstrate this entire stretch of petals because I think they are the ones that went wrong. So what I did wrong here is these two looks like they are in the same tonal value, which they shouldn't be, because imagine this is a cylinder, this should be way darker. So we got to model that correctly today. For this one, I'm going to change the petal to use this. So I'm going to duplicate this, bring it up, drop a shadow in, drop the color in twice. Once in the highlight and the second time in the mid-tones. Then I am going to position it and warp it. Okay, this is as much as it will go. The rest will have to be done manually. Oh, I'm gonna use the basic tool for better control. Okay. Let me just carve away what I don't want. Add more direction to that stroke. Let's see how this looks. Okay, better. One way to fix this flat petal is to duplicate the layer, set it to multiply, lower the opacity, erase the edge. Yeah, look, 3D already. There, better. This is another way to introduce modeling to your strokes. And then for the second one, I'm gonna use this one. I like this part because it has movement in it. I don't want the end. So I'm gonna bear that in mind when I place it in. And it needs to be like that because the direction of the brush should be like that. I'm trying to get the shadow to fall at the edge. Let me sculpt this first. I'm just carving away parts I don't need. I kind of like this hug here, so I'm probably going to keep it. This shouldn't exist. Neither should this. Now let's worry about the color. 2 layers should do it. I can see that the previous brown is still here, so I'm just gonna drop that in. The next one is fine. The third one will be this pink, so that it can flow to the next stroke. So this means ends here. This should be enough. Okay, merge it. Oh look, it looks so much better than the other one I did. And then for this last one, I'm gonna use this stroke. So duplicate it, flip it. Okay, then I can carve it away with the soft pull. And look at this sharp shadow here. It don't actually exist. So I'm thinking if I want to keep it. So this is what we have in the end. Couple of layers, drop the white. Okay, let's erase away the parts of the white that I don't want. I just want to keep this streak white. And for the bottom, I'm gonna erase it because it's gonna be the brown. So erase this, maintain the bottom brown so that the brown is curving inside, right? So it should be a little bit darker. There, it looks so much better. Okay, how can I improve this? Now I have 3 petals. The first thing I want to do is lower all their contrast because it's sticking out way too much. It needs to be more subtle. So I'm just gonna pick this petal and fix it first. First, I'm gonna pick this lighter brown and I'm gonna drop it into the black shadow pixel. I'm gonna have to do this a couple of times so that I can just target the shadows like this. Okay, now it's lower contrast already. I'm gonna repeat that here with the same brown. Make sure I'm only targeting the shadow. The contrast is still too much, so I'm gonna lower it down even more. Pick a even lighter shadow. Okay, there, I fixed that part. And this one as well. So make sure once you're done with a section, just give it a cross check and adjust the intensity of the shadow a little bit. And see if it fixes anything. Yeah, look, so much better. Okay, so this is how you're gonna go around fixing your stems for all the flowers. Make your own library. Be prepared for a long impasto stamping session. Okay, that's all for today's tutorial. As I promised, I'm going to show you the other app that you can use to paint dynamically with impasto. And that app is called ArtSet. This is ArtSet with the same base painting loaded in. In this new layer, I'm going to test out for you. They have a couple of thick paint here that we can try. I've loaded it into my hotbar already and a blender. So I'm just going to use this oil paint lumpy, pick this color and start painting. I can change my brush. So like I've said before, you got to treat impasto as a solid color block. So this is putty blend, it's quite strong. It's the only thing that can like blend impasto. And I can use this to continue laying real impasto and blend out edges that I don't want. So if you really want to paint dynamically, this is the app for you. See, all I'm doing is just repainting over with this color from the background. Oh god, too much. Okay, just easily smudge that away. Let's try and add something really big here. So easy. So easy. But of course you can't really control like here. How do you control all these small details? Yep. Let's see if we can get that same effect here. I match the size a bit. Because I'm just smudging the center, the edge, and the lumpiness remains. Not bad. I'll give it a try. You can just purchase this app. I will tell you the brushes that I use. This is oil paint lumpy, this is palette knife, and this is thick oil. And the only blender that really smooths out the texture is called Putty Blend. Well, okay, that's all for the tutorial today. I hope you can manage to finish this tutorial and apply the texture to the still life. For my upcoming tutorial, I am actually going to start from scratch and explain everything from zero to the end for a complete experience and a complete tutorial. So we are actually going to learn how to use the regular brushes as well for the base painting, and then go into building up the colors, and then finally into the impasto. So it's going to be a long one, and if you don't want to watch all the tutorials from 1 to 4, you can just watch number 5 and learn everything in one shot. But of course, workflows that I've discovered after that will only be shared in subsequent videos. Yeah. So that's all for today's folks, and I'll see you in the next tutorial. Bye.